Alright, so welcome to our bonus lecture about Jetpack Compose. As always, we start off with our attendance form. Justin and I are very happy that you guys came to this one. Though the attendance rate is a bit lower than usual. So, just some announcements. The Hack Challenge kickoff starts off next week. There will be rubrics, expectations, and logistics that will be released soon, so look forward to that. In addition, there will be bonus homework due on the 4th of December. This is designed to be taken at your own pace, and basically what you're doing is recreating the previous homework assignments using the new framework Jetpack Compose, and the exact details will be released next week. So if you're feeling like learning Jetpack Compose and actually being able to employ it in the future, I would consider doing these homeworks, even though there are a lot of prelims, so it's understandable if you guys do not do this. So today we will be talking about Jetpack Compose, and in general, how is it different from what we've done for the past semester, right? And in this case, Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose is a new framework that quickly rise in popularity over the regular Android Studio, right? And it has become the industry standard for many companies. And it builds off a lot of concepts that we've used in just a native Android. However, so it's not completely useless, and you can understand where you're coming from to understand like what sort of features have been added into Jetpack Compose that make it way easier to use. So, first of all, we can say bye-bye to XML, right? We no longer have two files that are corresponding to one screen, and instead everything is now on one screen. So in this case, you'll be writing the looks instead of drag and dropping with an XML. You'll be doing that in line. Initially, that might sound kind of difficult, right? Why would I want to do this? And in a majority of the cases, it allows for a lot more granular choices when it comes to actually building out your app, as well as the fact that it's way easier to just look at. You don't have to go back and forth between screens, referencing some component and trying to change its looks. In this case, once you've built it all out, everything's on one file, and you can easily tell, hey, this component has these types of looks because it's all within this like one function in this case. So before I jump too ahead, as a reminder, XML is almost, it does not exist in Jetpack Compose, and screens and components are no longer built out in the layout editor. Instead, everything is included in these, all your UI components are included in functions called composables. So if you guys have ever done React, this is something very similar where your entire code base, your UI components, your actual functionality is all stuffed within functions. So let's talk about composables. A composable is just a function annotation that allows you to define a function to build to show some UI components. It is similar to @override, and the composable function is written entirely in Kotlin, and therefore it eliminates the need for XMLs. So to talk a little bit more about how the composable file works, in here it is a function. And so one of the benefits of making it a function is the idea that you can re-render, or your function reacts to what happens within the UI. So as you may remember when we were doing recycler views, what we needed to do once a user changed some data is that we needed to go ping that specific recycler view, like when we say, for example, on our homework with Spotify player. What we had to do is once the user changed some UI component and the data for that UI component, we as the developers had to go in and actually tell the recycler view, hey, this UI component was updated, please actually make the UI component correspond with the correct state, right? Well, in this case, due to the fact that these are in composable functions, what it does is as soon as there is a change in the state of the actual UI component, say for example, some data changes, right? You change the profile name, whatever data changes, the composable function will then say, hey, I have data that's changed, and as a result, I will re-render this screen. And so you no longer have to manually go in and account for every single change within the state of your the state of your UI components to make it so that your UI is always up to date to the latest information that you're presenting it. But now we got that over the way, everything. But XML, used to do everything. How do we live without it, right? And the solution for us is how do we actually design these UI components? And for us, that is modifiers. So modifiers are extremely easy, flexible, and concise with how they apply as properties to composables. So, for example, if you want a component to fill the possible maximum height, well, all you have to do is add this modifier called fill max height, right? If you want to force a component to have a circular shape, you add this clip modifier. You want to give a component a background, you add this background modifier. So in this case, you're basically, to build out your entire screen, you're just adding a bunch of modifiers onto it in order to, you're adding a bunch of modifiers to it in order to get it that look. And one of the additional benefits, I believe, that happens when you have other code in a function is that when you actually save, what Jetpack Compose actually does is it will re-render your screen in real time. And as a result, you can make a change in Jetpack Compose, press save, and on your phone, for example, the screen will re-render without you actually having to press the run button again and having it to re-render everything. In addition, now we have, in the past, we actually wanted to press buttons with UI components. We needed listeners. So now we have a modifier called clickable, right? So what does it do? Well, you can say bye-bye to click listeners. You no longer actually have to set up these listeners with all these additional syntax and seeing what it does. Now, with a modifier, you can make any composable function a clickable piece of UI, and as a result, we do not need a syntax. You just have to add this clickable component to it. So now it could be text, it could be a box, it could be a button. There's no longer a specific component. For example, we don't need just a button to have the clicker, right? It could be anything. So when I'm developing Jetpack Compose components, in my case, I don't actually use the button component anymore. I just make a box, add some text into it, and then make it clickable in this case. Because we're given so much granularity when it comes to actually building our components, we can build out our own buttons incredibly easily, right? And this is just one of the examples where modifiers are able to eclipse what XML are able to do with fewer lines of code, right? We don't have to drag a button onto the screen. We can just tell a component, hey, it's clickable, and that is that. So that was just a very quick overview on what Jetpack Compose does. And so I think it's better for you guys to actually see how the Jetpack Compose actually feels, to actually understand how everything goes. And so we will get straight into the demo component.
All right, so we'll hop in here for the demo. I'm pretty excited to be talking to you guys about this and showing you guys what Jetpack Compose can do, since it is the framework that we are using on app dev actually to create our apps right now. And so I do have a lot more experience working with this, and I'm generally more acquainted with how to use Jetpack Compose over main framework. So to make a composable project, you've probably seen this option over here, empty compose activity, when you're creating an empty activity. So we can no longer just use the empty activity here, but we'll use empty compose activity this time. And I'll name this accordingly, just like you always would. It's on the wrong screen, we'll drag this over. And so the main activity will look a little bit different, but something you can see is that the Android Studio will have already populated some composable functions in here for you. So you'll see a couple down here, composable greeting. This is just a text that says hello, and you can see in the default preview, there's a little bit of a preview thing. It looks like a lot of preview, but they do populate a few composables in here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete them because it's basically just placeholder at this point. And I'll start by creating my own composable function. So I'll make a new folder for this to put my composable functions in. Throw this in here, we'll call it main. And so let's start by creating our first composable function. So in order to do that, it's pretty much just declared like any other function. I'll just call it fun main. Open up the braces. And the only thing that I need to do in order to tell Jetpack Compose that this needs to be a UI component is to put the add composable annotation. And now, if I import it, then now Jetpack Compose knows that this is going to define some sort of UI component. Okay, so let's say I want to make my main screen here, and as you guys know, I've made like Fibonacci or like factorial calculators like 3 times in the past, so why not make another one? So I'm going to make basically an entire screen here as my main component that will be a sort of factorial calculator because I just love making this. So we'll start off by putting something called a column down. This is kind of just like I guess analogous to a vertical list view or whatever it calls linear layout in native. It's basically just something vertical. And if I want this to fill the entire screen, I no longer have to go into XML and say go to my constraint layout and drag things out and change things to match parent. All I have to do is change the modifier of this thing to say modifier, I can spell it, modifier dot fill max size. And this will basically make it fill all of the dimensions horizontally and vertically, just like that. And I guess if I wanted to see it, actually there's not much to see yet, we'll get to that in a bit. But there is a way I can preview it as we'll see. But, okay, so now we have a column here. This, you could imagine, will take up the entire screen. And next, let's say, have some text displayed. So we'll call this, well, let's declare text. There are a lot of them. And we can define some text in here. I'll call it my composable calculator. And we can change the font size with just attributes here that we would pass into this composable. Every single thing here, as you can see, also is a composable. So this column is a composable, and it's a function because I'm passing in modifiers as sort of parameter here. These are all composable functions, and text is no different. So I can pass in a sort of parameter to my text as a font size, and I'll say this is 28.sp, just like you would do in an XML, except now it's in your code. So now we can at least actually see it if there's something in here. So if we put the @preview attribute on here, import that. Jetpack Compose actually has a way for you to see and sort of preview your composable function before you have to launch your app entirely. So this is what it looks like. Not too great. In fact, it doesn't even have a background, but you can see the preview here says my composable calculator, and it's sort of just like an empty screen otherwise, which is sort of what we'd expect. So even though we don't have another XML file, another entire layout editor to see things, we don't actually lose that functionality because we have this preview feature where we can see what our composable would look like. So I guess the first thing is that this is not horizontally centered, so all we have to do to change that is pass in an attribute here that I think is called horizontal alignment, alignment.center horizontally. And if I just refresh the preview here, little bit hard to see since it is kind of just black on black, but it did just horizontally align itself, as you can see. And I guess one thing I could do to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see is to pass in a background modifier. And in order to do that, all I have to do is say .background and then pass in a color, which I can call like so, color resource r.color.white. And if I were to reload the preview once more, now we can actually have a nice background where you can see my composable calculator right there. Awesome. Okay, so now I guess the next thing I'll show you is creating a little bit of a more nicely styled button than we're used to in Android native, since whenever you drag a button into your layout editor, I mean, I'm sure you've done it a million times now, you just see the ugly purple square almost button that says button with the default text. So let's make something a little bit nicer than that, at least just a little bit. So we can start off by declaring a button, and this is again another composable. And because it's in my column underneath my text, it'll get sort of rendered underneath the text, since column is again sort of like a vertical view or a linear layout. So now in my button I can say this time give it a shape. So we can say give a rounded corner shape with some amount of rounded corner shape with some amount of DP. So that'll be the DP for like the edges. So we'll say something like 14.dp. And it should just have to import. There we go. We'll give it a modifier for the height. Say like 50.dp or something. And we'll make it almost fill the entire max width. So in order to do that, we can say fill max width and pass in something like 0.8. So that'll correspond to trying to take up 80% of the width possible. And I think the last thing here it's screaming at me for is a on-click sort of listener. And in order to declare that, this is sort of, might seem like a little bit of strange syntax, but I can sort of pass in a function here as a parameter and define a function here. What it's actually yelling at me is for that. But yeah, I can pass in an on-click here as a sort of, again, this is a parameter to a function, sort of in line like this with the function declaration syntax, because this is still Kotlin. You've probably seen this before in Android Native, where you can declare functions and pass them in as almost like values as into a function as arguments. But we'll leave that blank for now. And let's actually see what that looks like. So we can, again, just hit the refresh. It's not going to look too great, but we'll clean it up as we go. So yeah, we can see we have our button here. Looks a lot, looks a little bit different from the button that we're used to. I'm going to increase the corner shape, or the corner size a little bit, and oh, okay, it actually automatically rebuilt it. Interesting. I was going to show that later, but apparently it wants to show it now. You can see if I actually edit this in line, it'll edit it in real time in the preview. I was supposed to enable this later, but I guess I'm showing it to you now. If I ever change these values in the code, it'll automatically pop up in the preview. So you can see as I increase the value here, the button will get more and more rounded. So that's a very easy, fast way for you to see your changes going into effect. And you can only get that with Jetpack Compose.
No more 5-minute load times.
Of course, yes. The infamous 2-minute wait times waiting for your projects to build in front of you. But one thing else we can do, or one final thing we can do for this button is actually put more composables in here. So in this area here, this is defined as a sort of row scope. This is basically just a scope for more composables to be put inside of this button. So I can declare a text here to say calculate. And if I rebuild, it won't automatically rebuild if it's something big like adding an entirely new preview, so I'll have to do that myself. But as you can see now, here it says calculate inside of the button. And I can put all sorts of stuff in here, but just for now, I'll just put a text only, since, I mean, what else could you really put in a button? Okay, so the next, I guess, thing is, well, why is it all just at the top? Let me make it not do that. So we can add things, another composable called spacers. These will basically just sort of take up as much space as possible in order to, or not modifier, in order to help us put these into the middle by sort of adding a bunch of empty space above them. So we can have a weight attribute on these. I believe it's called weight anyways. Is it not called weight? Oh, it's a modifier dot weight. Gotcha. Modifier equals modifier dot weight. Wonderful. And I'll just scatter a couple of these around here. So this will put a bunch of space at the top. So this would actually squish them to the bottom. So if I want to sort of move them to the middle and put some space in between them, I'll just kind of scatter these spacers in between so that there's going to be space above and in between and below them. So if I rebuild, they should sort of scatter out like so. And okay, that's looking a little bit better now, isn't it? So we have a little bit of space here at the top, between, and on the bottom. Okay, so the next thing we'd logically want to do for a calculator is have some sort of text input for buttons, or for numbers, so that our button press actually knows what to operate on. So we can sort of have an area here for a text view, or a text field, it's actually called. It's no longer called edit text. It's called text field. And we'll have, say, just some like placeholder text. And we can pass in a function here called onValueChange that'll read what the string has just changed to and do something based off of it. I guess I'll just rebuild just to show what that looks like as it appears on the preview. And now we actually have a text field popping up here. It's just as placeholder. So let me see what happens if I actually go in and try to interact with that. I'm not entirely sure if it'll update correctly, but yeah, we'll take a look and see as it pops up on our app. It's on my screen over here. I'll pull this over. Oh, oops, I actually never declared this main to appear in my main activity, so it's just kind of sitting around not doing anything. So let me actually make the main appear. Try it again, so it's not a blank screen. You can see my composable calculator, and now I can have a little bit of a text entry here. Something you'll see is that this doesn't actually change. I'm trying to delete right now, and if I press some buttons, it won't actually change. We'll get to that in a minute. But okay, now we have a pretty okay little calculator here. I'll add a few more little tidbits, such as so I can show off more of Jetpack Compose, such as a little bit of a text that says what you're currently going to be computing, the factorial of. So say you will calculate the factorial of, and then just have some placeholder here. And let's see, that may look, let's just take a look and see what that looks like. Might look a little bit, actually, this is not the right font size. Change this down to something like 18. Okay, that looks a little bit better. And I didn't need to put this here. Let's put this below the text field. I think that makes a little bit more sense. Okay. And hopefully this looks all right so that we can move on. Okay. And okay, this looks like something we can work with. Okay, so now let's have this whole calculator actually work now. So I want it so that if I were to go into the text field here and type some stuff, it'll automatically update. You will calculate the factorial of, let's say I put in 5 here. I want it to show, you will calculate the factorial of 5. So how do we do that? Well, in Android native, the way you want to do this is sort of set a onValueChange listener to the text field and say, okay, whenever my text is changed, I want to get like a sort of find view by ID reference to this text view and change the text. However, you can't really reference this in Jetpack Compose. As you can see, composable functions all have return type of unit, meaning essentially the equivalent of void in Java. So you can't really reference them after they've been declared. So I can't actually just go into my onValueChange here and say, oh, I want to change this text to say, oh, you will calculate the factorial of whatever the string is. I can't quite do that. But there are ways to do it in Jetpack Compose with sort of live data, live values that Jetpack Compose will automatically recompose with. So we'll get into more detail about the inner workings behind this, but just to showcase it, I'll create a variable with some kind of wacky syntax. It will be called, let's just say, my num. And I'll introduce some super wacky syntax. By remember, mutable state of, we'll call this a knowable int with value no. And I have to import some stuff. Import another thing. And okay, red squiggly lines are gone, awesome. So now, what the heck does this mean? Well, all you have to really know is that this is an integer, just declared in a really funky way. And that's all you'll need to know for now. So now let's treat this number as the number that my calculator will try to calculate the factorial of at all times. So if I say change my placeholder or change my text field, edit some text in there or enter some text into there for my number, I will sort of want to parse the integer from that and put that in my num. So just make a try catch statement here. And if, say, integer dot parse int of, or this is a try catch, so I can just assume that this may throw in integer dot parse int it, and that would be stored inside of my num. And let's say if it's not a valid string, I'll just say my num equals null. And now, something that might seem counterintuitive is now I'm just going to go down here and straight up just plug in the value of my num. Just my num, nothing else. No referencing between, or no direct reference to this text field at all in this on-value change listener. I'm just going to plug in my num, just that. And if you're from Android native, which all of you are, you might think this looks a little funky, and it totally does. Because if my num is just an integer, how would it know to automatically update this? Well, let's take a look and see what happens. Oh, oops. One more change. Gotta change this to my num also. To actually make it update with the value. Okay, so let me make another variable here for the string. Again, super wacky syntax. Mutable state of a string, and we'll throw this in here instead. Okay, that should fix that up. A little bit of a hiccup, but anyways. Now if I were to enter a number here, you can see it's automatically updating the text field every single time I add something here. And you might be thinking, well, how is that even possible? All I did in the text is just sort of reference to a variable, yet Jetpack Compose knows to automatically recompose or sort of redraw the text field whenever I change the value of this variable. And that's that's where the wacky syntax comes in. We won't go into too much detail today. We'll go into more detail I think 2 weeks from now on recomposition. But basically this remember thing, what it's essentially doing is wherever my num is being referenced, because it's declared with this sort of wacky syntax, wherever my num is being referenced, wherever it's being used, Jetpack Compose will automatically know to, whenever my num is changed, automatically change all references of it, automatically update all references of it to reflect the most recent value. And so that's why whenever I go to my text field and essentially change the value of my num, the text field down there automatically knows to update. And so obviously you probably don't want to have it say null. So we can, in this little inline here, say like something like if my num is equal to null, then display something nicer like NA, else my num. Something like that. And so now it should not say null, hopefully, and it would say something more like NA. Awesome. So that looks a little bit more professional, doesn't it? Okay. So that's something cool about it. A little bit of a cool showcase of Jetpack Compose. I wish I could reach my back button down there. Please come to me. There we go. Okay. And now let's make our calculate actually do something. So our calculate right now doesn't actually do anything because our onClick here is empty. So what if we wanted to make it so when our onClick happens, a little text shows up here that says what the factorial of that number would be. Let's in fact do that now. So let's say we want to show a result, then I'll make a sort of variable just like these, like result by remember, mutable state of, and for now I'll just have that be null. Declare that as a null int. So again, I can sort of use this in my code now as just pretty much just like a nullable int, just like any other int. And so whenever I, let's actually throw in a factorial function here. I didn't throw one of those in. Fun fact, and int returns an int if n 0 or 1, return 1, else n times fact n minus 1. Okay, that's factorial speed run. Anyone get anybody time? Oh, oops. Return. There we go. Nice. Okay, factorial. Now, in order to calculate that and store that into result, all I have to say is, well, we reference the value of my num right now and say the result. I'm going to set that equal to fact my num. And that should be, that's actually not safe. I'll say if my num is not equal to null, then I'll calculate this with a non-null force check. Okay, and now let's actually display this in a new text. So kind of just like I did with the calculate factorial, I'm going to make a new little field underneath my button that'll hopefully pop up and say whatever my result is. So your result is, and let me just delete all. Your result is, and we probably want to put in the value of our field result. But something that we'll probably see here is that our result, it should show up correctly. Your result is null. I forgot to put a spacer, but regardless, that doesn't actually look that bad. So we can say factorial 10, calculate, and it should automatically pop up with my number. Now, something that you might notice that my results was showing even before I had a result, so it was just kind of saying no. So what if I wanted to make it so that, let me throw a spacer here so it looks a little nicer. What if I wanted to make it so that the text here only shows up if the result is not null? If my result actually has something, well, all I have to do to make this is super simple is just say if result is not equal to null, then do the composable. It's actually that simple. Because composable functions will sort of automatically recompose, and so this entire function will recompose whenever the result is changed, and if result is not equal to null, only then will I draw the text. That's sort of the way this is working. So now, if I actually show this, there's going to be no result, but if I type in, say, 10, and actually calculate the result, that if statement will fire, and my result will pop up. This is something I can do in one line of Jetpack Compose that would probably take me many lines of XML and Android native code to replicate. Jetpack Compose makes all these sorts of things super, super easy. Okay, and I guess a couple more touches I could implement here just to get the point across. What if I wanted to make the button not clickable whenever my number is invalid? So say I enter something like that. I obviously can't compute the factorial of that very reasonably. So what if I wanted to make the button unclickable? Well, all I have to do is say enabled equals, well, logically, if my number is if my number is null, then I wouldn't want it to work. So, I mean, I just have to say my num is not equal to null. Now let's try that. Now when this first pops up, our button should be grayed out. And now if I were to type something in that is a valid number, no longer grays out. If I delete it, again, grays out. And all I have to do is put in this one line, because Jetpack Compose, again, knows to automatically recompose it whenever my num is changed to a valid number. So now, if I actually type something, then it will gray out, and vice versa. Super nice and easy to code on my end. calculate. And I guess one tiny little thing that I'm basically just going to do because we have a lot of time is throw in a little bit of an animation, because why not? So doing animations with Jetpack Compose is very easy, but not so much in native. So another benefit of Jetpack Compose over native. I can do something like, say, wait, animated equals animate float as state. And so let's make it so that, let's say, this spacer down here sort of fades in and fades out whether or not my result is showing or not. So if my result is not null, so if my result is something has actually been calculated, I want to show it with its full weight, so I'll say 1f, else something very small, let's say 0.01f. And so now I can sort of take this, throw this as the weight of this. And so the idea behind this is that, again, result is recomposing the function. So if result happens to be something that's not null, I want to show that weight. Otherwise, I want to sort of collapse it. So let's see what that looks like. And I honestly might have reversed the weights, but let's see what this looks like. We can calculate the factorial of 30. And it sort of tweens in. Let's have an instant replay of that. Yeah, let's do that again. And if my back show up that nice. Hit calculate, and if you're ready to feast your eyes on the first animation you've ever done. Oh my gosh, look at that. Okay, and again, all this was very, very easily done with Jetpack Compose, with basically just one line of code. And this is the power of Jetpack Compose. You're able to do so much with very, very few lines of code. And again, this is all in one file, no XML, no nothing. Pretty much just a couple of lines of code. And as long as you end up learning this funky syntax, you can make pretty complicated results like this in just a couple of, let's say, 30 lines or so, if I were to can make this a little bit more concise. So that is pretty much Power Jetpack Compose. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, no XML. I love it.
Yes, no XML. That's something we're all very excited about on AppDev, since we do use this framework instead of the XML calling stuff. It makes it so much easier. Everything's just in one file, and we have our productivity increased a lot just by this one simple change.
Isn't it a modifier you do a fall since everything in this web?
Oh yeah, there's something like that.
Like C space.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. In fact, let me implement that now just to make that a little bit more concise. Spacers give you a little bit more flexibility, but obviously it's sort of redundant. Just throwing spacers everywhere. If I wanted to make the spacers less for each individual spacer, I can change the weight here to say like 0.5 to make this spacer count for less. You can actually see it's changing in the little preview there. But I put all of them as 1F, so one little optimization I can do in that case, I believe it's called vertical arrangement, arrangement dot space between, pretty sure. Let's see what that looks like. And so I just deleted all the spacers, but I'm pretty sure it should look almost exactly the same. Not quite, but I do have, I guess, a couple of workarounds. So obviously this top text needs a little bit of padding from the top, and the button needs some padding from the bottom. So we can just sort of easily add that again with modifiers. Add something like 50.dp on the top. Again, super easy. I just typed that in like 5 seconds, whereas in XML I'd probably have to go over to the file and change that. Okay, now we have some padding on the top, and for the button, we'd most likely want to have some padding on the bottom. Go over to the modifier here and just tack on another modifier just like that. Change this to bottom. And this should look a little bit better than whatever that was. Did I? No, I mean that looks correct. I think it must be something with the spacers. Do you know why it could have just disappeared? I'm honestly not too sure. We'll just bring the spacers back. Again, spacers are just like a generally more flexible way to do this. To begin with, so optimization failed. Oh no, not a big deal though. Revive it back just to make sure. And okay, we're back. Cool. See that animation one last time before we send you off. Wow, amazing. Okay, so yeah, that's basically the demo for today. Again, we sort of want you to be curious about how these things work because we don't have time to go over them today, but we will be going over them in a future bonus lecture to tell you how recomposition works and how Jetpack Compose is able to do all of these sort of instant adjustments without me telling Jetpack Compose which components to specify or which components to change whenever I change these values. Jetpack Compose is very smart with knowing how to change everything in your app whenever it needs to be changed, and we'll go over that in a future bonus lecture. But otherwise, that is all we have for you today. Thank you, 3D, for coming. We really appreciate you guys coming out. But yeah, that's all we have for you.